Good evening. It is Tuesday, August 24th, 2021, and coming to you live from the Lonely Tree Media Studios in Yakima, Washington. This is the Best Lamm Sports Show. I am your host, David Lamm. With me is my son, Parker. Say hello, Parker.
Hello, Parker.
That is the way you're supposed to say it, right? I think.
I don't know if I've ever done it before.
We should have. I mean, that's the way it's always supposed to be done.
Correct.
We are live streaming on YouTube. We're on Twitter at Lamm Sports. On Facebook, under the Best Lamm Sports Show, you can send us an email, lambsports@gmail.com, and please check out our webpage, which is lambsports.com. Imagine that. You can find links to the past shows and the current trivia question on the website. You can also leave us information there or send us a message. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. Visit the webpage. I'm telling you. So eventually we're going to have merchandise on there.
Maybe.
That's in the future. It's coming. Just give me time. I'm telling you. You know what we're gonna. You know what?
Okay.
So let's go first. Let's talk about what we're gonna talk about, and then we'll do the intro part. So this thing right here, this trophy right here, that everyone can look at right here. This is what everyone's playing for. We're talking about college football tonight. We're gonna take a look at the preseason top 25. We're gonna take a deeper look at the Pac-12 conference. We're also gonna talk about some games we're excited to watch this year. We're gonna have trivia, which we're gonna start with.
I like that.
But first, we need to pay some bills because
Gotcha.
because that's what we do. First segment of the show brought to you by The Range. The Range is Central Washington's premier indoor shooting destination at 34,000 square feet. The Range is an all-inclusive facility offering firearm training, retail sales and supplies, full gunsmithing and repairs, custom builds, and Cerakote services. It's all under one roof at The Range, open Tuesday through Sunday from 10 to 7, Sunday 11 to 5. Go see our friends at The Range, 1701 Garrettson Lane in Yakima. Phone number is 509-571-1449. Make sure you mention the Best Lamm Sports Show. The Range, educate, equip, and empower. So let's start. We're going to start with the trivia question, and I'll tell you why. Because we're going to do it a little differently this year. This week, because I'm excited about everything, and so everything's all flutter.
Okay.
So, trivia question is this. This is the Stave and Stone trivia question. Since they began handing out the Heisman Trophy in 1935, there have been 6 underclassmen. And for those of you who don't know what an underclassman is, that's freshman or sophomore. 6 of them that have won the Heisman Trophy. Only one of them wasn't a quarterback. So the question is, who was that, and what year did he win the Heisman? There you go. I know, right?
It's not a bad one.
I know. It's not as easy as you'd think it would be. I don't know if you
That's
thought
probably because it's old. Usually
Why
when it's
do you
not
assume
easy,
that?
it's not in the last 25 years.
I'm not giving anything away. You just have to come up with a guess. That's all I'm doing.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
So let's get started with the things that we want to talk about, which is this poll right here, the AP Top 25 preseason poll, if you're looking at it, came out, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, something like that. This is what the press says. This is how it should finish, basically. In my estimation, that's what they do when they put out a poll. This is who the best team in the country is. This is how we should finish.
Should the season end right now, should be this person.
It should be this person. That's what they're saying. So if you look at it, it's a lot of the same 5 teams at the top: Alabama, Oklahoma, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia. Texas A&M is always in there for some reason. We haven't figured out what that is yet. Iowa State, coming off of last year's pretty good showing where they beat Oklahoma, seems to be getting a lot of love. We'll talk about them. Cincinnati, that's that group of 5 team. That's super important to the whole college football New Year's 6. I don't know. There's too many damn names. Then, of course, Notre Dame, North Carolina, Oregon, Wisconsin, Florida, Miami, USC, LSU, Indiana, Iowa, Penn State. That's the Big Ten region, 17, 18, 19. And then Washington, Texas, Coastal Carolina, Louisiana, Utah, and Arizona State. I think Coastal Carolina is getting a lot of love, too, from last year. So, not saying they're going to be good, but who knows? I mean, that's a 22 ranking for a team that's been in the rankings like 2 years. of their entire history. So anyway, that's what you see. There's 5 Pac-10 teams in there. There's a crap ton of SEC teams.
So you
in
said
there.
Pac-10. It's Pac-12.
Yeah, whatever they are. And Pac-14 eventually, or 27, I think. Isn't that
Something like that.
when they start adding all the teams in?
Something like that.
We're going to talk about the top 10 in relative. We're gonna breeze through them, but we're going to talk about the top 10, and then we're going to talk about the Pac-12, all the teams in the Pac-12, just a little bit. Focus on a couple, and then we're going to talk about some games that we are looking forward to. Oh, it's going to be fantastic. All right, so you ready?
Yep.
We're going to start with number 1 because that's who we start with. Alabama is number 1. It's their 8th preseason number 1 ranking. They've been ranked number 6 or better in the preseason poll every year since 2013. Of course, they won the national championship last year, 13-0, beat Notre Dame, beat Ohio State. Their offense is good. Their defense is good. But they did lose a lot of offense. Well over half. The team had 7,000 yards of offense last year. They lost 4,400 yards roughly between Mac Jones, Najee Harris, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Waddle. That's a big chunk. I'm not saying that's going to hurt them. I'm just saying. And there's some important games on the schedule. They open up with Miami, number 14 Miami, neutral site. It's in Atlanta. But of course, they have Florida, Texas A&M, LSU, and Auburn on their schedule. Auburn may or may not be any kind of good by the end of the year. We don't know. So, now that you've seen that,
yes.
What do you think of Alabama? Are they the consensus number 1? Should they have been number 1 in this poll?
They are literally the thing we should talk about the absolute least.
Okay.
Same old, same old. Alabama, 1, kicking ass, taking names until somebody proves otherwise, as they've been doing for about 2 decades.
Well, then that's probably enough.
Yeah, they're just not surprising. I don't care if they're replacing 22 out of 22 pieces. Doesn't matter. Until they prove that it's not going to work, it's going to work.
They just reload. I mean, that's all they do.
Yeah, it's not even like a real reload. The bullets are already in the mag. It's just the next shot.
So a couple of quick things about Alabama. Ranked number 1 at least 1 week every year since 2008. That's 13 seasons. They've been ranked at least
2 decades. That's a little generous then.
Yeah, pretty much. Between Alabama, LSU, Florida, Georgia, and Auburn, one of those teams has won the SEC championship every year since 1998. Just FYI. So there's 5 teams that have won all of them for the most part. And if you throw Tennessee in there, you can go all the way back to 1964, by the way.
Nice.
Yeah. So you Vanderbilt, nope, you're never going to win. Mississippi State, nope, never going to win. Just how it works out. Anyway, lots to replace, but they seem to be able to do that every year, so this is no big deal. So let's move on. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Number 2 team in the country is Oklahoma. Right?
Right.
They're in the preseason top 10 in 19 of the last 21 years. 9-2 in 2020. They were number 2 in the Big 12 because they lost to Iowa State. But then they beat Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game. So, yeah, we talked about that before we went on the air. They were 1-1 against Iowa State, but somehow they're the Big 12 champion. Okay. They won the Cotton Bowl over Florida in a dramatic fashion, but it was a Florida team that was depleted, was missing some players, some injuries, some COVID. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. Also, another offense that can score a crap ton of points. I think that, and I don't know why I don't have it on here. I don't have it on here at all, but Spencer Rattler will probably be, if I was going to pick right now, he will be your Heisman Trophy winner.
It's not a terrible take.
I don't think he's the best player in the country. I think he plays on a team that is in a bad conference that will win that conference fairly easily, and he will look good doing it. Because anytime you get to play Kansas, there's an extra 400 yards passing and 12 touchdowns or whatever it is. So he will look good doing it, and I just figure he'll be all over that. They literally only play 2 ranked teams. That's Texas and Ohio State, or Iowa State. Sorry, that's it. So, and they're both at home. So they will run it out. What do you think about Oklahoma?
I think that they're really, really, really good, but I think that they're overrated as always. I think that despite the fact that they're a team that only loses 2 to 3 games a year, they pretty much lose 2 to 3 games every single year. Which means, are you looking at 2 and 3 lost teams and thinking, oh yeah, they deserve to be top 2 in the country? No. And historically, that's what this team has been since 2006. No, sorry, 2002. They pretty much lost 2 or 3 games every year, with the exception of 2 years. where they've only lost one. So I don't trust them. They're going to drop it at some point, as usual, and they're going to drop out of the top 5 at some point, as usual. They're really good, but it's not going to sustain.
Well, they've won 6 straight conference titles, and this will probably I would bet this will be number 7.
That's fair.
Okay.
But it's also, like you said, a weak conference.
Yep.
And 6 straight conference titles while you lose 2 times, once to Texas and once to insert other team here, because it doesn't matter because they drop one big one. They've only have 2 big ones on their schedule. They drop one big one and one what the heck.
And this year, I'm not even considering Texas to be that. Texas is number 21 on this poll, and I don't even think Texas is that good. Brand new head coach. We are going to talk about Texas, but I feel like that's not even a team that should be in this discussion. It is Iowa State and Oklahoma, and one of those 2 teams will win this division or win this conference. That's all there is to it. But I think Oklahoma has that thing. I don't know what it is, that edge, whatever it is that they just know how to win.
Except for 2 games a year.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's enough. It's enough to win the conference.
They know how to win.
It's enough to get to a big bowl game.
It's the same thing the Ducks have. It's the same thing the Ducks have every year. Win a bunch of them, lose just a couple important ones.
Yep.
Too bad.
Let's talk about Clemson.
Right.
Number 3. Right. 6 straight preseason top 5 ranking. Okay. 10-2 last year. They won the ACC Atlantic and lost to Notre Dame during the regular season.
Right.
Without Trevor Lawrence, and then won. This was a rematch again, where they were both division winners, and so they won the conference championship game fairly easily. I don't know. That's a whole other thing where at least they won the division. We talked about the Big 12. They don't have divisions, and you get a rematch. I don't like that. But if you had divisions, okay, at least you can justify you're a division champion. You're a division champion. You get to play for a conference championship. I don't know. I feel like if the team that lost the regular season game wins the conference championship game, there should be another game. 2 out of 3 makes sense. I know they don't have time for that, but why not? Let's do it. They're losing Trevor Lawrence.
Seems like there'll be a scheduling issue.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Amari Rogers. They're losing a lot on offense. DJ. Oh, now I gotta remember how to pronounce it. DJ.
Yeah, you do.
Weongalele is how you pronounce it, by the way. Is replacing Trevor Lawrence. Is he going to be able to replace Trevor Lawrence?
No.
Okay.
They're still going to be a really good team, but the ACC is exactly like the Big 12 in that there's a couple contenders for the conference, but they're not contenders for the titles, and it's all just patience and things like that. They're going to be fine. They're not going to worry. They're not going to be able to replace Trevor Lawrence. They're not going to be nearly as good, but they'll be fine. He won't be the same. It's like when it's like I can't think of a team that I love, but it's like when a team you love, they're gonna lose their famous player, their star player, their Heisman Trophy winner, blah 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 blah. But it's not gonna be a drop off in terms of is the team gonna win. Might be a drop off in terms of you're not gonna score 60 points a game. You're gonna score 40 points a game. You're not gonna have a top 10 defense. You're gonna have a top 15 defense. That's what's gonna happen to them. They're gonna drop off, but not enough to fall out of conference race because the conference is fairly weak.
Right. Well, I figure with the losses that they've got, I mean, including Travis Etienne, that was a fairly large offensive drop off, the whole thing. Etienne and Trevor Lawrence combined for 1,100 yards of rushing of Clemson's 1,800 rushing yards last year. So they're losing a gigantic chunk of their rushing attack. So who knows? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen.
This season will tell us.
They start with Georgia.
Yeah.
So that's big game number
big game.
1. Yeah, right off the bat. And the good news is whoever loses that has 11 weeks to 12 weeks to make it up.
So it doesn't matter that much.
Right. And it'll count as a good loss no matter who loses. So that's always one of those crappy things. Oh, it was a good loss. There's no such thing. Loss is a loss. Let's talk about Ohio State University. Number 4 this year in the AP poll. This is their 30th preseason top 5 ranking in the school's history. They've been ranked number 6 or better in the preseason poll every year since 2013. So that's 8 years, 9 years. They were 7-1 last year. There was questions by specifically the Clemson head coach. We're not going to name names, Dabo, but who said, "Oh, they haven't played enough games. They shouldn't be in here." And then Ohio State went out and clobbered them.
Right, and then got clobbered.
And then got clobbered in the championship game. It's true, but at least that's why you play games. That's why you play those games, is because you can't just say, oh, they don't deserve to be here. Well, they're clearly better than you. 21 points
They
better than you.
they clobbered them at the expense of the title game because they kept their quarterback in,
Yes.
hurt,
Right.
playing, getting further injured, and then he was useless in the title game.
Pretty much.
Congratulations, you proved your point to Dabo. Have fun at home.
They lose said quarterback Justin Fields to the draft. He's playing in Chicago, and Trey Sermon also gone, who lit it up there at the end of the season.
Yeah, it literally was not on my radar until about 5 weeks left in the season.
Right. They do return 7 of the top 8 wide receivers, so that's a good deal. They have 6 quarterbacks on their roster that have a combined 0 pass attempts and 3 rushes.
Awesome.
Because you know why?
But they've been to a total of 20 schools.
But it's just what you said though. Justin Fields played like every down. He threw every pass for Ohio State last year. I don't even understand. So if you're looking at the key games down there at the bottom, September 11th, that's Oregon at Ohio State. October 23rd, they play Indiana, Penn State, and then Michigan, which is always a rivalry game, but it really hasn't been a rivalry game for like 8 or 9 years now, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think of Ohio State? The Ohio State-Oregon game is a gigantic game, week 2. Is it if Oregon and Ohio State played week 1? Okay, let me just back up. Ohio State and Oregon, who do you pick right now? If you had to pick one.
Homer, I'm Oregon.
Okay. If it played week 1, would you think it was better or worse for Oregon?
Better.
Yeah, I think so too. I think.
Yeah. The week 2 thing is silly. Why are you? Why just open the damn season with it? Everyone wants to watch it, but I'm sure the TV wasn't there because all the TV eyes are going to be on these 7 other games that are happening that day.
Well, the Big Ten opens conference play week 1. Literally, Ohio State plays at Minnesota in week 1. And they literally start right off the bat with conference games. And I think that's unfortunate for Oregon, who is going to watch. I mean, Ohio State's going to go out and play Minnesota in a conference game and get warmed up, and Oregon's going to play Fresno State. Not the same.
Don't sleep on Fresno State.
It's not the same as playing Minnesota. So
I do not know that. That is a you would assume Minnesota is better. That's what gets you beat, right? That's what coach would tell you. That's what gets you beat. You assumed Minnesota was better. Those two teams are not that far apart.
I don't play for them, and I don't coach for them on either team. So I get to put out my opinion and say, I think this is a better team.
I mean, that's the point of a radio show, right?
Right. So it doesn't matter to me who is actually. I think that you get a warm up. I think Minnesota is better than Fresno State. I think that helps Ohio State because they will be more tested come week 2. And plus, they're playing at home, so that's nothing to sneeze at, right?
Yeah.
They don't lose many games at home. All right, let's move. So who we got? Georgia is the number 5 team, and like we said, they're playing Clemson week 1. That's literally on Friday, September 3rd. They're playing. I don't remember where they're playing that game. I want to say it's in. No, it's not right. I can't remember where they're playing that game. There's so many neutral site games when these top teams play that aren't really neutral site games. It drives me nuts. So I don't really know. I wanted to say this one was played in Charlotte, but I could be wrong. I think might be thinking of a different game.
It is in Charlotte, yeah.
Is it Charlotte?
Yep, in Charlotte.
So it's closer.
But it also doesn't matter. Neither one of them's leaving SEC territory, so who cares?
But it's closer to Clemson than it is Georgia. It's better than when Georgia plays their games in Atlanta. Oh, that's a neutral site. Athens is what, 20 miles from Atlanta? Whatever. So
neutral sites are relative term. That's why I don't even care where they're playing. It doesn't matter. Right. It doesn't matter if it's in Atlanta or Charlotte or AT&T Stadium or something like. It doesn't matter. They're all the same.
Well, what I don't like is that pollsters give them credit for it's a neutral site victory. No, that's a home game. I mean, you know what I mean? When you're playing in Atlanta and you're from Georgia or it's a home game. But anyway, no big deal. But they only have two ranked teams on the schedule. If they can beat Clemson, there's a good chance Georgia's your SEC East champion.
Probably.
They just got to beat Florida because everybody else in that division, suspect at best. Just to me. The SEC East is kind of a mess. It always kind of has been. There's always usually one team, and the rest of them are kind of meh. So, what do you think of Georgia?
I think they're overrated as usual. I think that they're a team that gets way too much credit, and I think that they always start the season super high. They always do something, right? They always get supported by the SEC, and it's clout, but they always lose a couple games. they aren't competitive in the one that matters towards the end.
Hmm.
They're just an overrated team as usual. They're a team that maybe deserves to be here, but maybe deserves to be in this spot. But that it just means all right. So here's best case scenario: Georgia's finishing 5 at the end of the year. So great, you're now playing for what, the Armed Forces Bowl, the Fiesta. Who cares, right? It's not a championship, but that's
Right.
the best team that they are. Is not a championship team.
The other bowl.
Yeah, the other bowl.
Yeah. I mean, well, best case scenario, they could run the table and lose the SEC championship game to Alabama and still get into the playoff. They've done that before.
Well, I'm at best case scenario they have a normal Georgia season where there was 2 games, and what
right.
their outcome is this. Yes,
Right.
they could, of course, just win everything and then lose that one and still get in. They've done that before, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
So, but that's
they got
not going to happen.
They're returning most of their offense. They lost some defense. Eric Stokes, Richard LeCount III. Those two guys, defensive backs, combined for 7 of Georgia's 9 interceptions last year. They're both gone, as well as Aziz Ojolari, who had 8.5 sacks and 4 forced fumbles last year. So
nice.
8.5 sacks is a lot of damn sacks for
quite a few, yeah.
a shortened season. Let's talk about a more SEC, because I know that's what you want to talk about. Texas A&M, number 6.
Oh.
It's their fifth preseason, ranked number 6 or better. It's the 3rd straight preseason top 25. That doesn't sound right. I think it is. They were 9-1 last year, probably one of their best seasons ever. And their loss was to Alabama, of course. So they finished 2nd in the SEC West. They went to the Orange Bowl, beat an overrated North Carolina 41-27. They lost Kellen Mond and Buddy Johnson, who had 86 tackles, 4 sacks, and an interception at linebacker. They're losing both those guys. Kellen Mond is he was an underachiever, if you ask me, at Texas A&M. They talked the world about him, and I just never saw it. Am I right?
Sounds right, yeah.
They're returning Isaiah Spiller. He might be the best running back in the SEC. 1,000 yards last year, 9 touchdowns at Texas A&M. But anyway, big games. They got to play number 1 Alabama. They got to play number 16 LSU. Those are the only 2 ranked teams on Texas A&M's schedule, and they get Alabama at home. So
sounds right.
So there's a chance for Texas A&M, who I think is number 1 on the all overrated poll team or whatever. Every year they get this hype, and they get credit for losing to Alabama, and they get credit for losing to LSU or whoever else they lose to, and they finish 8-4. 9-5, whatever it is, 9-3. You know, if you look down at their records, there's a lot of 8-9 win seasons, and they always finish in the top 25. And everyone seems to think they're this great team, but they haven't. They've won 0 SEC championships since they joined the SEC. What do you think of Texas A&M?
I think you said it all for me.
Oh, good. Nice.
I think everything that you were just said, I had written down to say, but you said it all.
Sorry.
So there it is.
They joined
Texas A&M. Overrated. What's new?
They joined the SEC in 2012. They're 42-31 in conference play.
Sounds right.
And they're 77-37 overall, which means they're 35-6 in non-conference games since joining the SEC. They've
only broke 10 wins one time in the past 21 years.
Yeah. Right.
I don't want to hear about them anymore. They're so not that team.
And that was Johnny Manziel.
That was Johnny Manziel, and they were 11-2. And guess what? They still finished 5th in the conference.
Yeah, I know. All right, let's go back to the Big 12.
Yeah.
Iowa State, number 7. It's their first ever preseason top 10 ranking. Their 4th time being in the top 25. 9-3 last year. They were number 1 in the Big 12, but they lost the Big 12 championship game. So you take that for what it means. They did beat Oregon in the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl 34-17. They're losing a 7-sack defensive end in Jaquan Bailey, and Lawrence White, defensive back, who had 60 tackles, led the team and 1 interception. They are returning almost everyone on offense. It's Brock Purdy, Breece Hall, 1,500 yards rushing and 21 touchdowns last year. He will probably be in New York for the Heisman Trophy presentation. That's my guess. Anyway, you can see the key games right there, and obviously that November 20th one is the gigantic one. But they do start week 2 with Iowa and Iowa State. That might be fun to watch. A couple ranked teams. What do you think of Iowa State?
I think that they're another one of those teams that they get a lot of credit for having not done that much. They are a team that gets up and beat teams at random. They're that 7-6 team that somehow beat Texas, or that 8-5 team that somehow beat Oklahoma, or went on a road trip to a non-conference game and somehow beat Auburn or something like that. They're that team, but they're not the team that wins titles. They're barely the team that wins conference titles. They've only done it 2 times in the last 20 years. So they're scary looking on paper, but every season they're not. So I
Yeah.
just think it's going to fall. I mean, they can still beat you. That's the issue with them. They can still beat you at some point, but they're not going to win. I don't think they're going to win the conference. I don't think they're going to make any sort of national run. So this ranking is far too high.
Okay. They are returning all of their linebackers, which is a gigantic thing. Mike Rose, Jake Hummel, Orion Vance, all three of which were tackling machines. And their defense is going to be pretty solid. Will McDonald's back at defensive end. He had 10.5 sacks last year. I don't know. They're going to be solid on both sides of the ball still, and I think that's what's earning them that number 7 ranking is that all that experience is coming back. But they still have to do it on the field. You still got to beat Oklahoma, and then you have to beat Oklahoma again probably because you did once last year, but you got to do it twice in order to be anything. So I feel like that's unfair, but we talk about that anyway. So yeah, Iowa State, a little bit overrated probably. I would have had them somewhere around 13, 14, 15. That'd been me.
Yeah.
And what do I know? Cincinnati. Cincinnati is that group of 5 team that everyone says could jump into the playoff.
Oh, this is the year.
This is the year. This is their first ever preseason top 10 ranking at number 8. It's their second time ever in the preseason top 25. Only twice. They went 9-1 last year. They lost to Georgia in the Peach Bowl 24-21. They are returning Desmond Ridder and 6 wide receivers that had 100 more yards receiving. That's quite a bit. I mean, so they're returning most of their receiving core. If Desmond Ridder can play up to his potential and they can manage to beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame in October, you might be talking about them in a college football playoff. Now, they got to avoid losing to one of those teams like Central Florida or whoever in the AAC that they tend to overlook. What do you think about Cincinnati?
Overrated. Everyone's overrated. It's just a lot of that.
Well,
you have 4 teams. That's it.
Well,
Everyone else is kind of competing for 4th, 5th place. They're so they have a better record in my eyes over the past decade than Iowa State. They play in a worse conference, or you could say they play in a worse conference, but they've been more consistently better. They've had a couple. Their down years were way worse than any of the down years for Iowa State,
right.
In 4 wins, but their up years are higher. They have 4 10-win seasons or more in the last 10 years, and Iowa State had 1. So it's things like that. Like, I'm looking at these things. They've been on a tear. They got Luke Fickell, which I think is a huge part of their preseason ranking. I think the fact that he's on their squad and was attached to Ohio State is why they're giving it love.
Yeah, maybe. And to be fair, they don't play in the Big 12 either. So they play in the American Athletic Conference, and
a worse conference.
You're going to gain some wins just by playing in that conference. So that's probably why the record looks like it does. But it's a good football team. I'm not going to take anything away. They're still going to be a good football team. They're going to win a lot of games. But if they don't win those 2 ranked games against Indiana and Notre Dame, then it's pointless. There's no reason to put them up there.
Yeah.
They have to show me because I'm from Missouri. Something like that. Yeah. So it brings us to one of our other favorite overrated teams, and that's Notre Dame. Number 9 this year, 35th preseason top 10 rankings, their 3rd straight preseason top 10. They've received at least one top 25 vote every year since 1965. So I'm confused. They've been ranked in a poll or received a vote at least one time every year since 1965. That is incredible to me. That they clearly haven't been that good, but at some point in time, somebody thought they were that good and voted for them. That's weird. They were 10-2 last year. They were number 1 in the ACC, but lost to Clemson in the ACC championship game, and then went out and laid an egg against Alabama. But everybody did last year, so that's kind of expected. They're losing quite a bit. Ian Book, Javon McKinley. they're losing some stuff. They're returning running back Kyron Williams ran for 1,100 yards, 13 touchdowns, but they've only got 2 wide receivers of last year's top 5. So they're going to need to develop some wideouts, but some of that's transfer, some of that's whatever. But you can see the schedule. They play Wisconsin at home, Cincinnati at home, USC at home, and North Carolina at home. The only 4 ranked teams on their schedule are all at home. So sets up nicely for Notre Dame. How do you feel about Notre Dame?
Overrated. Every single damn year, overrated. I can't wait for them to go 12-0 in the schedule and get bounced out 60-7 in the first round of the playoffs, just so we can sit there and look at their dumbasses here back at 9th again. Every single year is the same crap with that team. Let's get them out of here.
They did pick up Jack Cohn at quarterback from Wisconsin.
Great.
Not that that's a big deal. But that sets up that Notre Dame Wisconsin game to be a fun one to watch.
Ooh,
right?
At Notre Dame.
It's at Notre Dame. That's right. Probably I put Notre Dame as number 2 on our overrated poll. By the way, Texas A&M
as most overrated.
Notre Dame. Yeah, as most overrated.
Oh no, I'm putting Notre Dame as most overrated.
You think
the
so?
fact they're even in the top 10 is stupid. The fact they've been in the top 10 every year. The year that they were sitting there with Manti Te'o and talking about Heisman Trophy things, I'm watching them win games by 2 points and bad calls and piss poor weather, and we're still talking about them like they're winners. They're not winners.
And they own their own network. So
yeah, they own their own network. That actually doesn't kind of neither here nor there for me. But I hate them either way. I want them gone. I want them out of my top 25. I want them not to see their faces anymore until they join a conference and actually struggle like everyone else.
I'm just saying, if you own your own network and you're playing on that network every game, just about, then you can pretty much
own the ABC, do they?
And NBC,
whatever it is.
The president of NBC went to Notre Dame, and he's a Notre Dame alum and supporter and booster, and so NBC has a contract to exclusively broadcast.
Least surprising thing you've ever said.
But what I'm saying is that when you own your own network, kind of, you
can get a lot of good airtime and good spots.
You might be able to get calls too. Is all I'm saying, because nobody wants to watch. Nobody on my network wants to watch my team lose.
Maybe.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying stranger things have happened. If you're going to be conspiracy about it, let's do it. North Carolina, the prettiest uniforms in college football.
Maybe.
Number 10 in the poll. It's their 4th preseason top 10. Only 3 times have they finished in the AP top 10 ever. They were 8-4 last year, number 4 in the ACC. They lost to Texas A&M, the Capital One Orange Bowl, 41-27. I feel like this is another overrated team. You're going to say that again. I know you are. I don't know how they got up here, other than the ACC needed a team with Clemson, right, to make some noise. I guess they only play 2 ranked teams, and they're both at home. Miami, Notre Dame. No, that's not right. They play at Notre Dame. Oh, it's a neutral site game with Notre Dame. Never mind. They're playing in Chicago, I think. Yeah. So, anyway, which is not really neutral, but anyway. So Miami and Notre Dame are the only 2 ranked teams on their schedule. It's a fairly easy schedule because the rest of the ACC, as we have said, sucks, especially their division, which doesn't have Clemson in it. So, how do you feel about North Carolina?
Mac Brown effect. So Mac Brown worked for ESPN for a while. He now coaches at a ACC school, and that ACC school, or like you said, Clemson needs competition. Got to create it somewhere. Otherwise, Clemson's not going to be able to stay highly ranked.
Right.
So this will probably be the last year that happens. Now that they've announced they're in league with other conferences, but they're trying their best. They're slapping a couple teams in here that don't deserve to be here just to keep Clemson afloat, keep their schedule afloat.
And we haven't even talked about
we haven't
even talked about the announcement today of the alliance, or whatever you want to call it. Pac-12, Big Ten, ACC. Basically, what they're doing is agreeing that in the future they're going to schedule each other more. But there's so many contracts out there right now that they got to let all that stuff work itself out before they can change the world. So it's going to be a long time before anything happens. But we'll see. I think it's all to combat the SEC and their move, but we'll see. I don't know. I don't know what you make of it, but
the same thing.
Okay, we're gonna find out. We'll find out more. Stay tuned. In another 2 years, we might know some more. It's gonna be a slow developing story. Just FYI. We are at the midway point, sorta. Second half of the show. brought to you by Boss Kitty Hand-Dyed Yarns. Be sure to tune in to BossKittyLive.com at 6 p.m. every Monday and Wednesday and 11 a.m. every other Sunday. Go to BossKittyShop.com and get your DK and fingering weight yarns as well as Stitch and Progress markers. Looking for a gift? Get them a Boss Kitty Shop virtual gift card and let them pick it out themselves. I mean, that's the way everything goes now, right? Especially since, if you can't be there in person, give them the gift card and send it to them, right?
That's right.
That's Boss Kitty Hand-Dyed Yarns. Yarn so boss, you'll knit your pants. So, second half of the show, we're going to talk about the Pac-12. You ready?
Yep.
Do you want to see what the media said in terms of predictions or should we just go through the teams first? Let's go through the teams.
Go to the teams first, and then you'll tell me afterward.
So here's Oregon, number 11 in the AP poll, 11th preseason top 15 ranking. Their highest AP poll finish is number 2. They did it 3 times. They were 4-3 last year. They were number 2 in the Pac-12 North, but slid into the Pac-12 championship game by virtue of Washington's COVID misfortunes. They couldn't field enough players. So Oregon gets to go to the Pac-12 championship game where they promptly beat USC 31-24, who was the South champion, and then lost to Iowa State in a game they really didn't look that good in. No, they didn't.
They looked like a team that had 7 starters opt out.
They did, and that was Oregon's story last year. I think this is a team that was really good had they had all their players, and let's talk about they're right here. If you look at them, the losses that they had from last year, the players that sat out: Penei Sewell, Javon Holland, Thomas Graham, Brady Breeze, Diamador Lenore, and I forgot to capitalize Diamador's first name. I apologize, Diamador.
Those guys were all drafted, right?
All drafted, yeah, and they all sat out last year. Didn't play at all. So
every bit of their NFL talent sat.
That's correct. And then Tyler Shook, who looked shaky at best. Right? I mean, maybe. I don't know. He transferred at the end of the year when he realized probably he wasn't going to be the starting quarterback anymore to Texas Tech, where they announced just this week that he will be the starting quarterback at Texas Tech. That's interesting. They're returning both C.J. Verdell, Travis Dye. They're a 1-2 combination. I'm not sure which one's the better running back. I think it's Verdell, to be honest with you.
I think Dye's got those hands issues.
Yeah. 11 of 12 players who actually caught a pass in 2020 are coming back for Oregon. That's a lot of experience catching passes.
And they brought in a couple top 25 wide receivers.
Correct. There are some transfers in that are going to boost everything. I fully expect them to take a gigantic leap forward compared to last year. But I'm not sure how good they can be, and they're going to have to show that right away week 2 against Ohio State.
That's a great way to think about it.
What do you think, the Ohio State game aside, what do you think about Oregon in terms of Pac-12 championship? How are they going to do?
I think they're going to win the Pac-12 championship.
Okay.
I see with the talent that they have on their roster and the coaching that's been there and the recruiting that they get done, I see no reason at all why they don't win the Pac-12 title. So that basically means they're going to win 7, 8 games, maybe 9 games in what's it called? Yeah, 8 games in conference at least, only losing 1 maybe. They usually drop 1 to somebody random, and then I think they could finish the season with 2 losses, and then they're going to get a bowl game berth, but not a championship bowl game. So if they beat Ohio State, you can look for them to pretty much run the Pac-12. But if they don't beat Ohio State, look for them to lose 1 more Pac-12 game, but still win the Pac.
Yeah, so we didn't even talk about Kayvon Thibodeau. That's what leads the defense, and he is probably the best player in the country. I mean, either side of the football. He in my opinion, he will be in New York for that Heisman Trophy presentation, but he will not win the Heisman because
they don't give it to defenders that often.
Yeah, that's just not what they do. But I think this is he's a special talent that hopefully he will get a chance to show it, and we'll have a full season, and it won't be all messed up. So who knows? All the rules have come out, by the way, and we haven't even talked about. We'll talk about that at the end. Never mind. We'll talk about the COVID rules that the conferences are announcing. USC, number 15 in this preseason poll. It's their 46th preseason top 15 ranking. Head coach Clay Helton, by the way, is 45-23 in 7 seasons, 5-1 last year. Their only loss was to Oregon in the Pac-12 championship, 31-24. They opted out of the bowl appearance last year. A lot of teams from the Pac-12 did that. They are losing Talanoa Hufanga.
Sure.
Say that 6 times really fast. Special talent at safety. He had 62 tackles, 3 sacks, 4 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. Um, Pretty amazing. That's a really big deal. He was their defense pretty much last year. They are returning Keaton Slovis, who everyone tells me is really good. I don't know. I mean, he's okay. I haven't seen anything special out of USC but we didn't see a full season last year, so it might change. We might know more this year. They obviously play in the South, so Utah and Arizona State on schedule, and then they have that non-conference game on the 23rd of October against Notre Dame at Notre Dame. Those are the must-win games for Southern Cal if they're going to vie for a college football playoff spot. How do you feel about Southern California? In terms of the Pac-12 South, the whole Pac-12.
They stand to win the Pac-12 South again. I think unless the Pac-12 has this habit of having teams that aren't good all of a sudden have good years, and it's not good for the Pac-12 when that happens because UCLA is going to win 9 games this year and beat USC in the only game, but USC is the better team and maybe has the better overall. Maybe they're 10-2, but UCLA is 9-3, but with a win over them, and it sends them. That sort of stuff happens in the Pac-12, and it's not the best. USC should win it. They should win it. It's pretty simple. They're the best team in the South. I mean, you could make your case for what Arizona State did 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whenever that was, and say, oh, well, they've just had problems or whatever. I don't care. USC is the team to beat.
Do do you? Well, now I forgot what I was going to ask you. Do you think Clay Helton is on some sort of hot seat if USC doesn't
Yeah.
win the Pac-12, maybe? Or I mean,
If they step back from last year, because I mean last year they were 5-1, so it's like the equivalent of, 10-2 season.
Yeah.
So they did pretty well, but if they lose less than that, if they're sub 10, he there's a chance he could get fired.
Yeah, I feel like if they don't, that if they don't win the Pac-12, I feel like they're going to consider firing him. I feel like that's the step they have to take. Um, I don't know. They're the only team to win the Pac-12 from the South, by the way. Of the since they've had the Pac-12 championship game since 2012, they're 2011. They're the only team to win from the South. The North has won every other game.
Right.
Interesting. I mean, but all right, we'll see. The Utah. Wait, we're not at Utah. We're at Washington. Washington's number 20. 31st preseason top 20. Jimmy Lake was 3-1 last year. Had some COVID issues. Obviously, they couldn't play in the Pac-12 championship game, even though they were number 1 in the North. But they couldn't even play Oregon in the regular season game. They're losing a lot. There was a lot of transfers that left. There are some players coming in, but it seems like there's a lot of turnover, and it might take Washington a season or two to figure that out. I don't know. They play Oregon at home, Arizona State at home. Those are the 2 ranked teams they play this year, both of them at home. So the schedule sets up nicely. I'm just not sure how quickly the talent will grab a hold of the new coach and their system. How do you feel about Washington as a Pac-12 challenger to Oregon?
I feel like that's exactly you just said it. They're a Pac-12 challenger to Oregon. I don't think they're going to actually challenge them. I don't think they're going to win. And besides, even if I did think it, I probably wouldn't say it. That's one of those few times, people, when I am a homer. And when it comes to Washington, I will very rarely give them credit. They're a decent team, but they're not better than Oregon. They haven't proven that on any consistent basis over the last decade. So they'll need to prove that before I give them any more than, oh, yeah, they'll be second in the North.
Gotcha. They've won 3 out of the last 5 Pac-12 North titles, so they've had some wins and they're there. But in one of those years, they went to the college football playoff. But they're
probably got spanked.
Yeah, they're not that kind of team right now for sure. This is a team that I could easily see being 8-4 on their schedule, even though their schedule's fairly easy.
Yeah, they're the bulk of their success has come while Oregon is dealing with internal crap.
Yeah,
not hiring the right coaches, firing coaches, things like that. Like that's the crap that was costing Oregon that conference. It wasn't. I firmly do not believe it was not that Washington was particularly better. It's just that Oregon was being very mismanaged.
Yeah.
And that became obvious because as soon as Oregon got good management, thumping starts again.
Yeah.
It's
So
right back at it like it never left.
let's talk about Utah.
Okay.
Number 24, they're the fifth preseason top 25 ranking. Kyle Whittingham has been the coach at Utah for 10 seasons, 76 and 46. They were 3-2 last year. COVID stopped a couple of games last year. They were number 3 in the Pac-12 South. Actually finished behind Colorado and USC. There was a lot of turnover on offense. There was a crap ton of transfers in and out, too many to name. But Charlie Brewer from Baylor transferred to Utah. He's going to be their quarterback this year. Britton Covey, the returning wide receiver. They're returning most of their defense, and Utah is that team that's normally built on their defense. Their defense was a little less than good last year. I mean, not. I won't say less than good. They were okay. How about that? As a defense last year, not great, not spectacular, and that's usually what Utah relies on. They play USC, Arizona State, and Oregon. Those are the 3 ranked teams in conference. 2 of those are at home. They play at USC on October 9th. That might just decide the Pac-12 South October 9th. But anyway, how do you feel about Utah as a Pac-12 South challenger?
They never get enough credit. Even earlier when I was talking about USC, I didn't talk about Utah. It's so easy to overlook them because of all of the glamour of the southwestern United States, and thinking about USC and UCLA and Arizona State and Arizona. It's so easy to look at those teams and just forget about Utah. That's been pretty consistently thumping a lot of teams in the Pac-12 for a decade now.
Yeah.
So they're always a challenger, but they very rarely get up and do it. You know, they're always threatening you. They're always scary. They always seem scary, but it seems like a lot of bark, no bite.
And they had that gigantic opportunity a couple of years ago when they were, number 5 in the country heading into the Pac-12 championship game, and then Oregon thumped them pretty hard. So they had a chance right there to make a statement and maybe get into the playoff, but they didn't. So that's kind of been their story, right on the edge of being really good. They're good. They're just not really good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they're just not quite those guys.
Not quite. Yeah, anyway. But they could win the Pac-12 South. I would not be surprised. They wouldn't surprise me at all. They'd have to beat USC to do it, but it would not surprise me if they did that. So anyway, because I don't have that much faith in USC. So there's that. Arizona State is the other team in the South that we probably should talk about. The last ranked team in the Pac-12. They're number 25. This is their 23rd preseason top 25. Herm Edwards is 17-13 in 3 seasons, 2-2 last year, because again couldn't play all the games. They were number 4 in the Pac-12 South. They're returning Jaden Daniels, who is a dynamic quarterback, and their leading rusher Rashad White from last year. They lost. Here's the interesting statistic. Both Jack Luckhurst and Christian Zendejas, both kickers, and both their punters, Kevin Macias and Josh Plaster, all entered the transfer portal. So my question is, what's wrong with your special teams coach? Because clearly everybody wanted out. Now, they didn't all leave.
I don't know how Herm handles his business over there, but Portland State goes through special teams coaches like crazy until they found one guy who's been their special teams coach now for, I think, 5 or 6 years, and they completely underappreciate him all the time. And it makes me wonder why he hasn't left. And so I think about that every time I think about special teams having issues. I'm like, yeah, it's probably because their coach just didn't let the special teams guy in the meeting, or probably because their coach didn't tell them that they were going out to dinner or something like that. Because that's what kept happening to this coach.
They left him at home.
It's a nuts thing. It's like I'm sitting at home doing nothing on a Friday night. All the coaches are out, and none of them text me because I do special teams, and pretty much what that means is I've got my kickers just swinging their legs back and forth, stretching for 20 minutes, jot out, kick a field goal, go back to calisthenics.
And then I pull 3 or 4 of your guys from the starting team to cover kickoffs and punts. And
that's right. Here, put on these pennies. You guys are now going to be special teams guys for a few minutes. I just feel like they're annoyances.
And all you get to listen to as a special teams coach is, don't get one of my guys hurt.
One of my guys hurt. That's right. Don't touch the kicker.
Anyway, you can see their conference games of note there. Utah, USC, Washington at Washington on November 13th. that may make or break their season.
Well,
Even if
yeah,
they win the other games, that may be one of those things. Arizona State, I like Jaden Daniels. I think he's good, but he needs to be great this year because I think Herm Edwards is probably on the hot seat. That's going to be a hot take somewhere, but I feel like they hired him thinking, oh, NFL caliber, and he brought in Marvin Lewis, former NFL head coach. He's got lots of experience, and they should be winning, right? But
maybe.
but they're not. They haven't been great. So how do you feel about Arizona State?
Well, I feel that Jaden Daniels needs a sandwich. That dude is skinny. But no, so I watched them 2 years ago. Last year I didn't pay them much attention, but 2 years ago is when they beat Oregon. At I think it was at Arizona State,
Yeah,
and it was this whole hubbub. But you kind of got a glimpse of what it was while it was happening, which was like hype train. It was a bunch of super excited people cascading into a win, but when it's not going well, they look terrible.
yeah,
They look like they don't trust each other. They look like they don't trust their coaches. I watched a thing last year where one of them, like during one of the games that they were losing, they started fighting. Players started fighting on the sidelines. You don't have control of your program based on that information. When it's going well, it's going really well. When it's going bad, you're losing all your games. I don't trust this as a team. I think 25 is actually too high for them.
and maybe you may be right. I feel like if Jaden Dan, you're right, and he is thin. I mean, he looks like he's one linebacker shot away from being broken for the rest of his life. But
Right.
but yeah, he's super quick. He's fast. If he can make the right decisions and he can turn that offense and make it dynamic, that they can be really good. I just don't know if he can do it because he hasn't really shown that he's able to do it yet. He shows the flashes, but it's not consistent, like you said. So I don't know.
Right.
I'll see what we'll see what happens with Arizona State. But they're right now would be what picked to finish third in the Pac-12 South. Um, I don't know. Might be too high. Might not be. We'll see.
Too high.
Too
Yep.
too high. Cal's the next team. We're gonna have to move a little quicker because we've got a few more teams. But
We can rapid fire these ones.
Cal was 1-3 last year. They were the hardest hit by COVID. They missed 4 games due to
Yep.
COVID. Their only win last year was over Oregon, 21-17.
Yep.
They're lost a couple of players. Nothing big. Chase Garbers is coming back. You got some good defensive players coming back. They have 3 ranked teams. They've got to play Washington and Oregon both on the road. That's going to be difficult. And then USC at home late in the season. How do you feel about Cal?
Still, I think that they're still going to end up being at the bottom of the pack. I think that they're just not a team that's there yet. They're not ready for it. They haven't been recruiting well enough. They haven't been putting it together. They had that one win last year, but again, you're talking about wins in a COVID year. It's so tough to give them that much credit. You really want to, but also you're not sure if you can. A team like them that had the COVID issues that they had, they're 1-4. It's like, well, no kidding, they didn't have anybody.
Right.
And it's like, oh, but you guys they won a game against Oregon. That's promise. Like, well, that's also a team that was missing a bunch of players.
Yeah.
So again, you have trouble getting it behind it.
How do you feel about Stanford? So 4-2 in 2020. David Shaw's been at Stanford for 10 years. He's 90-36. Currently the Pac-12 coach with the most wins in the Pac-12. Second straight year they're not in the preseason top 25. After 9 consecutive years they were. They declined a bowl invitation last year. They were bowl eligible, but they decided not to go. They missed 1 game. They lost Davis Mills, their quarterback, and Simi Fehoko, their number 1 wide receiver, both in the NFL. I think Fajoko's playing for your Broncos.
Yeah, he is.
They returning Austin Jones, the number 1 running back, 550 yards last year, and Jet Toner, probably one of the best names in the Pac-12.
Somebody was literally just looking at a printer and going,
right? Let's see, Laser Jet Toner. I get it. Look at their schedule. Look at the ranked teams that they play. 15 USC, 11 Oregon, 25 Arizona State, 20 Washington, 24 Utah, number 9 Notre Dame.
big time.
They have 6 ranked opponents on their schedule. It's probably the toughest schedule in the Pac-12, although no one is saying that. I was sitting here looking at like 10 different websites, and they're trying to tell me that, oh, yeah, they're middle of the road because they're playing all those teams at home. And I'm like, whatever. You've got all those teams on your schedule. That is not an easy schedule. That's
No.
nobody in the SEC is playing 6 ranked teams.
But that's why they're calling the middle of the road, because they don't expect them to come out of that very much ahead.
Right, but they're just saying that it's not a tough. It's like not even rated a tough schedule. It's like 40th or 40 something in the country. I'm like, that's you got to be kidding me. They say
Yeah, it's what it
Arkansas
is.
schedule is tougher because it's got Alabama on it. Well, a loss is a loss.
Sure.
Doesn't matter. So anyway, their non-conference games: Kansas State, Vandy, and Notre Dame. They didn't
Nice.
schedule an FBS or an FCS school. Got to give them a lot of credit. That's a tough year. I still think they'll be about 500. But what do you think?
About the same. Yep. Same thing. I think they're going to be about 500, maybe even cross like 8 wins if they sneak out a couple of those. But yeah, 500.
David Shaw might be the best coach in the Pac-12 that doesn't have a good team anymore. He used to, but they just haven't been great. They've been looking for it, but they just can't seem to get it back.
Got to recruit better.
I think so, and it's tough. They're in a tough spot. Anyway, let's talk about UCLA. 3-4, 3-4 last year, 5th in the Pac-12 South. Chip Kelly is 10-21 in 3 seasons at UCLA. He was 46-7 in 4 years at Oregon. They led the Pac-12 last year with 23 sacks. UCLA. I thought that was an interesting stat. I did not realize that they were that good at sacking teams and still lost. Still had a losing record. Dorian Thompson-Robinson's coming back. Britton Brown. They got a bunch of players coming back offensively. We know Chip Kelly's an offensive mastermind. They need to find some defense. Their defense has to come to play because they also have 6 ranked teams, and they started off with LSU on September 4th. Yeah, UCLA, by the way, lost 4 games last year by a combined 15 points. They were right there. They were 15, 16, what? They needed 16, 17, 18, 19 points away from being 7-0. Anyway, that's pretty amazing. But they could be really dangerous if they could find a defense. But that's never been Chip Kelly's hallmark. So what do you think of UCLA?
I think that they're going to continue to be mediocre, unfortunately, and Chip Kelly's going to lose his job after this year.
Yeah.
It's going to be a return to normalcy for all these other teams, and unless they make a huge leap forward, they're just not going to cut it.
He's definitely another hot seat coach. For sure. All right, let's talk about Colorado. Also in the South, they were 4-2 last year. Carl Durrell is 4-2 in one season. He only had 1 year last year, his first year. He was 35-27 in 5 years at UCLA as the head coach. They lost terribly to Texas in the Alamo Bowl. Just that game was ugly. Just right from the get. I watched the game. It was bad. They lose their number 1 quarterback, Sam Neuer, transferred to Oregon State, and he may be the starting quarterback at Oregon State this year. We'll talk about that in a minute. They do return Jarek Broussard, their leading running back. Carson Wells, the linebacker, had 6.5 sacks. Their top 15 tacklers from 2020 are all coming back. That sounds good for the defense. We'll see. They start the season, or not starts. The second week of the season is number 6 Texas A&M at a neutral site. No, I think they play at Texas A&M. I think it's at College Station. That's a big time road trip, and maybe they can expose them, right?
Maybe
not. They got, again, this is another team with 6 ranked teams on the schedule. How do you feel about Colorado in the South?
Have fun being 3rd or 4th or 5th in the South. Just not that. Every team, it seems like, is just they're just teams. They're not great. They're not that good. They're okay. And it's the second year of this coach. I'll give them that. They looked really formidable at times last year. I'll give them that. Then they got shellacked in their bowl game. We'll take both those things back.
Yeah.
Because you played a good team and you got crushed. The best other team that you had to play was Arizona State, and you missed that game. They're not a team. They're not a threat.
They're getting
Not a threat to anything.
They're getting JT Shrout from Tennessee in transfer.
Sweet.
I know, right?
Yeah, getting cast-offs from another school is not the best way to success.
From a team that doesn't have a really good quarterback.
especially when it's quarterbacks. There's not that many teams. I'm not talking about the guys that transfer. I'm talking about the guys who couldn't cut it,
right,
and eventually transfer because they weren't good enough as a starter.
Sure.
Those are the guys you don't want. It's one thing when JT Daniels transfers because he's a backup and doesn't want to be a backup. Right. It's another thing when JT Shrout transfers because he can't play quarterback at a high level.
He's a whole different JT. Oregon State was 2-5 in 2020, 4th in the Pac-12 North. Jonathan Smith is 9-22 in 3 seasons at Oregon State. They are 1-4 versus ranked opponents in his tenure. That only win was against Oregon last year, 41-38, and that was thanks to Jermar Jefferson. He's gone. That's a big loss for their team. They do return all of the wide receivers and tight ends that had 100 or more yards receiving from last year, and Tristan Gebbia, Chance Nolan at quarterbacks. Apparently, this is all between Neuer and Gebbia. Is the battle, the quarterback battle? Gebbia had a hamstring injury late last season. Um, I think there's what the word is that Neuer from Colorado will be the quarterback at Oregon State this year.
Right.
Anyway, they started with Purdue at Purdue, which is it's an interesting game.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll be any good because I don't think either team is very good, but they also have 5 ranked teams on the schedule thanks to some terrible scheduling. They got USC, ASU, and Utah all out of the South.
Sounds right.
So Oregon State may be in the same boat they were last year and the year before and the year before. I don't see them taking a gigantic move up at all, just because everyone else will be back to full strength. I fourth in the Pac-12 might be the best they can hope for. Am I wrong?
I think you're not wrong at all. I think that they're going to be second to last or last in the Pac-12 again. I don't have confidence in that team. I don't have confidence in that leadership. John Smith is like if vanilla was a person, just nothing there. It's not fun. So they need a little flash and a little substance.
Yeah, they're definitely they need one gigantic recruit that has got something. You know what I mean? On offense,
Yep.
somebody a special playmaker, and how do you get that when you're in the same state as Oregon, the same conference with USC? You know,
Same division as Washington.
how do you
Yeah.
get them to come to Corvallis? I don't know.
The answer is you don't.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah.
Um,
That's what's been happening.
let's talk about Washington State. 1-3 last year. That was Nick Rolovich's first season. He came from Hawaii. They won their opening game at Oregon State 38-28 and then lost the other 3, and they missed a couple games from COVID. I don't know. They're returning. Max Borghi was hurt most of last year. He only had like 10 rushing carries last year, but in 2019, 817 yards rushing, 11 touchdowns, and another 600 yards receiving and 5 more touchdowns in 2019. A healthy Max Borghi makes Washington State a much better football team. He's one of those Christian McCaffrey type guys, jack of all trades. They're returning most of their defense. I still don't see, and they get Jarrett Guarantano from Tennessee. So
Right.
I don't know if that's a thing. That's going to be
No,
good.
it's not a thing.
I watched him play.
They're another non-existent team.
I watched him play multiple times, and every time I was so underwhelmed. It was just amazing. Yeah, their schedule also tough. 5 ranked teams all in the Pac-12. They've got all those South teams too: USC, Utah, Arizona State. I don't know why that happens to some teams and not others. Just scheduling quirk. Washington State, Rolovich said he's not getting a vaccine for personal reasons, and that might be the biggest story of Washington State's whole season. There's a state mandate for state employees to get the vaccine. He works for the university. It's a state university. He's going to have to either get one or have a medical exemption of some kind. If he's got one, he's not saying. So he's been kind of mum about the whole thing. But, anyway, that might be the biggest whole story of the year. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But Washington State's almost a non-factor, yeah?
Yeah. Every other team is a non-factor. Yeah. We've already talked about the ones that are going to be competitive, but they're specifically because of him are going to be kept in a bad position all season.
Arizona.
Is a
team that was winless last year. Jed Fish is now taking over for Kevin Sumlin, who was 9-20 in 3 seasons at Arizona. They missed
the same record as John Smith.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And Oregon State's happy about it, but Arizona's
they're pleased with mediocrity.
The defense, the whole Arizona defense last year in 5 games had 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles. That there are guys that we've talked about here today that have had more than that. Just in the one guy in the season last year. I don't even know. But Jed Fish has a lot of experience. He's been the head coach, or not head coach, but a coach or coordinator at 7 different NFL teams: UCLA, Minnesota, and Michigan.
Right.
It's like a guy who's perennially been in college, right, for like 30 years.
Yeah.
We'll see what he does as his first head coaching gig. I don't know. Arizona's might not be the place you want to be. They only averaged 17 points a game and gave up 40 last year. I don't have much hope for them. They do return Anthony Pandy. He's one of the best linebackers in the Pac-12, but I don't think that they're going to do anything. They open the season at BYU September 4th. How do you feel about Arizona?
I think they're going to win 4 or 5 games, and then that'll be that. And They'll move on out of everyone's way pretty fast. I think most of these teams show their colors really early.
I was going to give them 3, but all
That's
right.
generous.
3 wins, I'm thinking.
Super generous.
Let's talk about. So those were in order of how the Pac-12 media people determined that they would finish. So the media has voted that Oregon will be the North champion and USC will be the South champion, and they'll rematch in the Pac-12 championship. And Oregon is the predicted. Media has predicted Oregon will win the Pac-12. Don't know what the record will be. We have no idea. I mean, that's why we got to play the games. But if Oregon can manage to do what they're capable of doing, and if their defense comes to play like they're capable of playing, they're going to be a very tough team to beat. If they can beat Ohio State, they have a chance at a college football playoff spot. Right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know any other way to say it, but that game is super
That is the
important.
way to say it. Do what you got to do. Do the thing with the talent you have. Win the games.
Yeah.
If you do that thing, you get into the playoff.
Right.
That's the reward, right? If you mess up as a coach, as a player, you're going to cost the team those things.
If you can keep the other team from scoring, you win a lot of football games. Let's talk about non-conference games real quick that are of note early in the season. These are things that could affect the entire college football playoff landscape, or might not be, but they might just be fun to watch. And the very first game that's I circled this. That's North Carolina, Virginia Tech on Friday, September the 3rd. It's one of the earliest games of the season. I think that's going to be an interesting test for North Carolina. At Virginia Tech is not an easy place to win. Virginia Tech's not necessarily good, but anyway, I think that's going to be fun to watch. Alabama opens at Miami, with Miami at Atlanta. Interesting. Miami,
Classic SEC.
If Miami has a chance, they got to, if you're going to have a chance to beat Alabama, week 1's the time to do it. We talked about that. I think that's their only shot if they can stymie a brand new quarterback, running back, wide receiver core. Maybe. But I still pick Alabama.
Yeah.
Louisiana and Texas. Look at that one. At
Louisiana.
Texas. I know, right? I think Texas is overrated. I think Louisiana is actually better than they're getting credit for. Georgia Clemson, that's a gigantic one. But like we said, it's week 1, so both those teams have a chance to come back if they lose. LSU and at UCLA is an interesting game. That's a big win, big chance, big stage for Chip Kelly. I don't know if that's going to happen. On the 11th, which is week 2, that's that Oregon-Ohio State game at 9 a.m. I don't even want to be up that early.
And yet we will.
I know. On Fox. That same day, Texas A&M versus Colorado in Denver. That's a 12:30 game right after that on Fox. So it's a doubleheader. And then Iowa and Iowa State play at 1:30 on ABC. Washington at Michigan at 5 on ABC. Those are some gigantic games that'll be fun to watch. Cincinnati at Indiana. It's the first of Cincinnati's 2 tests. They play Notre Dame later. But September 18th, if they can win that game, they can prove a little bit. To me, I don't think Indiana's that great, but it will be a win over a ranked team, probably. And then there's the Notre Dame-Wisconsin game in Chicago on Saturday, September 25th. Which game are you looking forward to seeing the most, other than Oregon-Ohio State? Because I know that's the game you're going to tell me.
Oh crap! I wrote it down. Auburn, Penn State. You didn't even put it on here.
Auburn and Penn State.
Auburn plays at Penn State this year.
And Penn State's
that is the game. That's the game I'm looking forward to the most.
And Penn State's ranked what, 19th this year?
Something like that, yeah.
Somewhere in that ballpark. I don't remember.
Yeah, I just think it's a good matchup for an SEC team, a big name SEC team, one that's usually kind of competing for the top of the West, to travel that far.
Yeah, they're going to actually a true road game, which is unusual.
That's why it's my favorite.
Yeah, all right. That could be fun to watch too. I'm on board. I like watching college football, especially if the games are good. I hate watching when we get these two teams like Georgia and Clemson will play, and Clemson will win 41-7 or something, and you're like, that was pointless. Then Georgia's overrated, and it's a waste of my time. But I want a good football game. That's all.
Gotcha.
I want. Any game you turn on, you just want it to be close, right? It's more exciting that way. Anyway, that's a lot of what's going on. Trivia question was, look at that, I don't have the right thing. Trivia question brought to you by Stave and Stone Wine Estates in Hood River. Go to the winery at the Vineyard, 3827 Fletcher Drive. They're open 7 days a week from 12 to 6 for I just can't speak. Indoor and patio dining. Go to staveandstone.com. Check out their selection of award-winning wines. Make a reservation. Go taste for yourself. Call 541-946-3750. That's 541-WINE-750. Or email them, info@staveandstone.com for more information. Stave and Stone, wines with personality. Remember the trivia question?
Yes, I do.
Who is the... Go ahead. I'll say it again.
Sorry, I didn't know if you. No, I didn't know if you wanted me to repeat it because there's
Oh,
a pause there.
do you have it? You got the whole thing?
Six underclassmen, Heisman Trophy winners. Well, only one of them was not a running back, or only one of them was not a quarterback.
Right. Who is it, and
Yeah.
what year did he win?
Yeah. So I'm assuming it was a running back, but I actually don't know who. I only came up with 5 underclassmen, and they were all quarterbacks.
Oh, so you missed the one.
So I actually don't know the answer. I came up with Tim Tebow, Johnny Manziel, Lamar, Sam Bradford, and Jameis Winston. They're all quarterbacks.
They were. You're absolutely right.
But those are the only underclassmen I can think of.
There was only one more, and that's Mark Ingram.
Oh, right in the middle there.
2009 Alabama, 1,542
Right in the
yards, 15 touchdowns. He had another 30 catches for 322 yards and 3 touchdowns. He beat Stanford's Toby Gerhart in the closest Heisman Trophy voting ever. All Gerhart did was run for 1,871 yards and 28 touchdowns for Stanford that year.
No big deal.
He probably should have won the Heisman, but Alabama was your national champion, so.
Is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, well, gosh, that's all I have. Do you have anything you want to say about college football before we go out?
Go Ducks.
Go Ducks, that's right. We're going to be back next week, right? More sports, more fun, more trivia. I don't know. I don't know what else to say, but we're live streaming on YouTube every weekend. We're on Twitter at Lamm Sports, on Facebook under the Best Lamm Sports Show. You can email us, lambsports@gmail.com. We want to thank our sponsors, The Range in Yakima, Boss Kitty Hand-Dyed Yarns, Stone Wine Estates in Hood River. Looking forward to college football. It's coming this weekend. The 28th is the first games of college football for this year. So, this has been a Brain Rock production, a division of Lonely Tree Media, LLC.